I feel like it's such a great start to Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month. If I do say so, everyone is looking amazing and being amazing, and it's fun to get together and celebrate. So I'll start things off. Welcome. Hello, hola. I am Alex Viasante. I'm the online program manager at the Highlights Foundation, and I'm joining you from Eastern Pennsylvania on the traditional and contemporary lands of the Lenape Nation. Welcome to a special HF Gather Una Celebración of Latinx Heritage Month and all that it entails. A celebration we hope that lasts 365, not just the next 30 days. But before we get to that, a few reminders. We are recording tonight's session. All registers will be sent a link from Zoom of this recording, and it will be available at the Highlights Foundation YouTube page, where you can see all of our previous gathers. All of them are wonderful, free content to motivate, inspire, and challenge the creator in you. This is a webinar style session, so unfortunately we can't see you or hear you. But if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can. De corazón, I can tell you, we would absolutely adore to hear from you. As I said in the chat, just share any aha moments, any responses to what we're saying, anything at all. In these spaces, in the chat, in the Zoom, anywhere we come together as the Highlights Foundation, we ask for your respectful engagement. We strive for a safe and inclusive environment. We ask that you join us with no hate, no harm, and no harassment of any kind. Let's be mindful about what we say, because of course, how we treat one another is reflected in all that we do and how we come together as familia. That was a spoiler alert. Familia was a spoiler alert. I also wanted to just say hi and thank you for being here, George Brown, the Highlights Foundation Executive Director. Hey, George. And now to that celebración that I promised. We are celebrating Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month, and that's a mouthful. And it's also a glorious, varied, and amplio umbrella term. I did the math, something I try to avoid if I can. And if we were to have one person from every Latin American country represented on this Zoom, we'd have about 30 people on this Zoom. And I doubt those 30 people would agree on what it means to be Latinx. That's how different we all are. And that's what makes us beautiful. So I'm going to start the conversation by asking Ismée Williams. Ismée, if you would introduce yourself, we'll put up a beautiful slide that Nia Garcia made for us. And if you could let us know what you think the term Latinx means to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you again to the Highlights Foundation for hosting this amazing event. My name is Ismée Williams. I am the young adult author of This Train is Being Held. That's my most recent work, as well as Water in May. My mother was born in Cuba. My father is from New Jersey. And I am also one of the co-founders of the Latinx KidLit Book Festival, which I'll talk to you more about later. Some of the other hats that I wear, I'm a pediatric cardiologist. I work in New York City, and I'm a mother to 3 kids, all 3 of whom started school this week, finally, in New York City. Thank you. And yeah, so what does Latinx mean to me? You know, we were all chatting about this beforehand, and it's funny, I feel like since the 5 of us have had this conversation, our definitions are probably coalescing a little bit. But I can tell you a little bit about my own, I guess, personal thoughts, which is that it is this sort of feeling of belonging, this sense of, you know, sharing some sort of cultural heritage with people from other countries even. And these other countries are the countries of Latin America, as Alex described. And the wonderful Meg Medina, when asked this question, during our Latinx KidLit Book Festival last year, mentioned in her beautiful Flipgrid that to her Latinx means sort of familia. And that resonated with so many of us because it was the sense of suddenly feeling like you belong, like people understand, you know, like the food, the culture, the abuelitos, all of it. And so that's my answer. Next person.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Hilda Burkos, and I am the author of the middle grade novel, Ana Maria Reyes Does Not Live in a Castle, the picture book, The Cot in the Living Room, and the upcoming middle grade novel, Miosotis Flores Never Forgets, which comes out on October 26th. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. I was born and raised in New York City, in Washington Heights. And I've been living in the Philadelphia area for many years now. This is where my husband and I raised our two now grown children. And in addition to writing books in my spare time, I also work as an attorney. So in terms of what the term Latinx means to me, it's similar to what Ismée said. When I thought about this question, what I came up with is that it means community. And obviously, as Alex mentioned, there are many, many countries in Latin America, and we have some similarities and also many differences. And like any family, we celebrate each other and we support each other, and we support those differences as well as those similarities. So that's it. Thank you.
Hi, so glad to be here and so honored to be with my familia, Las Musas, and everybody here who's joined us today. My name is NoNieqa Ramos, and I am an author of young adult books, The Truth Is and the Disturbed Girls Dictionary, and picture books, Your Mama, Beauty Woke, and Hair Story. When I think of the term Latinx, I think of what it can't be anymore, fraught with homophobia and anti-Blackism, and I want to say that at the beginning. But I also think about how we move forward and what we're building. And when I hear the words community and I hear the words familia and I look at the group in this room, this is what Latinx means. All of us here together building new meaning, coming from pain, coming from loss, but also coming from the things that have never been taken from us, our resilience, our defiance, our creativity. For all of the differences that we have and those differences we honor, we're all in this room united by what is spoken and unspoken. And so again, going back to Megbedina, still at the roots, I think of our beautiful, family united by these stories that we're learning to tell and reclaiming.
Noni, can you talk about your books a little bit?
Oh, I have to talk about my books. So my books. So my books, The Truth Is and the Disturbed Girls Dictionary, center on my favorite age protagonist, 15-year-olds who are dealing with defining themselves in the Disturbed Girls Dictionary and discovering who they are. And the truth is beyond the loss and the trauma that they've experienced. And my picture books are very celebratory, so they almost pivot to another part of my own experiences, which is celebration. So Your Mama celebrates single mamas and caregivers, and Beauty Woke raises the beautiful Boricua flag, which is behind me, like 10 feet tall, and I actually got on my recent trip, and I will wear it as a cape. And Hair Story is a book that celebrates not just the hair of my characters Preciosa and Rudine, but also ancestry and icons in Latinidad. And I think that all together, these books kind of represent the complexity I'm talking about, which is we are all these different things. These are all parts of our story. The fight forward, and also what we've gained, and the beauty that has always existed running through our families and our veins. Does that answer the question?
I'm just mad I have to go after Noni. That's just not fair. You know me, I'm Alex Viasante. I am the author of The Grief Keeper, and there are 2 books coming out in next year. One is called Our Shadows Have Claws. I'm really excited about that one because it's an anthology of Latinx horror, and I got to write a story that takes place entirely in Uruguay, where my family is from, and that was just changed me, being able to tell that story. And also the upcoming anthology All Signs Point TS. I just saw the cover of it, and even though I can't share it yet, I'm so excited. So that's me as an author. I think I'm just going to have to invoke the name of Meg Medina once again, because she is so completely right about it being about familia. Being Latinx is about being familia. But I think it's important for people to understand that the term Latinx is a term for us here in the United States. It doesn't mean anything to my primos y tíos y tías in Uruguay, because they don't understand that complexity of being in America and trying to find community when you may be part of a bigger community of the diaspora, or you may not. And that was my experience. So I think that in addition to being a family, being Latinx and identifying with that community is also like a chain, like a or a web of connection, where, as Hilda said, we don't have all the same experiences, but we have that sort of resonance that we can understand what it's like to come from somewhere else and be away from home, but also make our home here. So I think it's a really complex, beautiful question even to ask and to come up with a lot of different answers.
Thank you, Alex. And then that leaves me. Hello, I am Mia Garcia. I was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And so far, I am the author of 2 YA contemporaries, the Even If the Sky Falls, which is a 24-hour romance set in New Orleans, and The Resolutions, which is about 4 Puerto Rican teens doing New Year's resolutions for each other. And I'm very excited to also be in the anthology with Alex, Our Shadows Have Claws. And this is actually my first speculative fiction piece, which is something that I love to write, but haven't been able to get it published yet. So having this piece in this wonderful anthology coming out next year is kind of amazing, and I'm super geeking out. To just echo what Noni said, whenever I think of Latinx or Latinidad or Hispanic, or whichever term you want to use, or debate about, I think of just the imperfection of any generalization of an incredibly diverse and complex group of individuals that encompass different races, religions, ethnicities, genders, and the way that the imperfection of one term that we could, in a hubris, think that could define so many people. So I think the words that come to mind are imperfect, but evolving. And it's so fun to think about in like 2 or 3 years, 5 years, what different term or with different ways we will have this conversation, and find new words to describe ourselves. Most of us here are creatives and writers and illustrators. So it's fun to think how Latinx will turn into something else, might splinter into other things as well that might be better terms, better, but still limited, of course. So that's my answer. And I think that leads us to the part where we start sharing some wonderful resources. And I am going to start with sharing a little bit about Las Musas. Everyone here on this panel is a Musa except for George. Sorry, George. An honorary Musa, since we do a whole bunch of stuff with highlights all the time. So Las Musas is a collective of Latinx women and otherwise marginalized people whose gender identity aligns with femininity, writing or illustrating in traditional children's literature. So that means published usually on print and ebook, anything that encompasses traditional children's literature. We started in 2018 with just 12 Musas, and we are currently almost at 100 members, which includes debuts, sophomore, and madrinas who are Musas that have published multiple books. For example, Monica Brown and Lulu Delacre, who both published close to 20, 25 books. I can't even keep track. They're so fantastic and prolific. Some great resources that Las Musas have put together recently, the book festival, which Ismée is going to be speaking about in a few minutes, are Latinx KidLit resources. So this is a great resource for illustrators and writers who are looking for Latinx resources specifically to KidLit. So that's mentorships, scholarships, pitch events, editors that are Latinx or editors that are looking for Latinx creators. What else we have? Bookstores and craft sessions. Las Musas last year, because of the pandemic, started a series of virtual panels, and they are all available on our websites. And we cover such wonderful things like writing and mental health, how to write a picture book, how to do a plot or an outline, how to write multiple point of views. So all that information is gathered on our website and ready to use at any time. Do any of the other Musas want to add a little bit about this wonderful collective and how it is a great resource for the KidLit world?
Do you want to talk a little bit about Las Hermanas? I don't know if you mentioned the Hermanas, because we have at Highlights, our social media manager, Kat Galeano, is an hermana.
Hi, Kat. And I also noticed a couple of hermanas in the chat. So so Hermanas is our mentorship program. In 2019, we really thought hard about how we as writers could make some form of change or pay it forward in a way to those that are still looking for agents or looking for editors. So we created the Hermanas program, which is a 6-month mentorship program, which will start in 2022, I believe, in April. The information is on our website as well. So this is 6 months, which writers can work on a particular project, or illustrators can work on a particular portfolio. And it covers everything from picture book to young adults, chapter books, middle grade, and all that wonderful, wonderful stuff. So I think I want to say 3 of our hermanas this year got agents or sold a book. It's been amazing, and I'm so happy for them. And I think it's a great program. That could not just because I run it.
I also think it's a great program, and I don't run it. I think you do a great job. But it goes back to that idea of comunidad and just trying to continuously amplify, all of the creative voices in there. So yeah, love that.
You should mention the podcast too, the Las Musas podcast.
We have so much stuff. I'm just like, it's so hard to keep track. So this year we did launch a podcast, and it is all about, we have several series, including debut focuses, which we speak to all of our 2021 debuts about things like, what does it feel like to get an ARC? What did it feel like to try and get an agent? What is the submission process like? What is the rejection process like for them? And I think these last few episodes were like talking about mental health and self-care and reviewer spaces. So we really dive deep into those debut conversations. We also have a series called Ask a Musa, in which you can submit in questions, and Musas and Madrinas will jump in and answer them on the podcast as well.
And I realized right? I mean, the talk gets real, like the talk about finances.
Oh yeah, we recently did a finance episode, and it got really, down to the specifics. It was wonderful. I mean, I learned things that I hadn't known before, because we all have such different experiences. And also realized I forgot to put our website there, like a ridiculous person that I am. It is lasmusasbooks.com. Very simple. I'm trying to think what other wonderful new things, but I think this is a perfect, unless someone else has something else to say, it's a perfect segue into one of the biggest events of the year. I think so too. So I'm going to mute myself, kick it over to Ismée.
Sure. So hi everyone again. So the Latinx KidLit Book Festival, this will be our 2nd year in December of 2021. So Alex, Mayra Cuevas, and I came up with the idea. It was really Mayra's idea. And it was the middle of the pandemic. It wasn't quite the middle. It was the summer of 2020. And Maida and I had both had books that came out. My book came out in February and hers came out 2 weeks later in the beginning of March, right before the lockdown. And, everybody was at home and we were watching the news. I was a doctor, I was working, but things were pretty dire. And we thought, let's do something celebratory. Let's do a festival and let's do something that'll give back to the teachers and the students, because we were very concerned. Lots of us are mothers. I'm also a pediatrician. I was looking at the effects of the pandemic on kids who weren't actually able to go into the classroom and were perhaps missing out on that daily affirmation that they get from looking their teacher in the eye and having their teacher say their name and tell them that their thoughts are valuable and that their work has value and impact. And so with those goals in mind, we said, let's do a KidLit book festival celebrating Latinx authors, illustrators, and all their works. And it was so fantastic. We decided that we were going to keep doing it. And so we're doing it again this year. And the other big news is that we have incorporated and we're in the process. We've incorporated as a nonprofit. We are in the process of getting our tax exemption, the 501c3 from the IRS. It's a process. And so hopefully this festival will be here for a very long time. And so even though this festival is aiming to celebrate Latinx creators and their works, it is not just for the Latinx community. It is for everybody. It is for all book lovers everywhere. This year, we've decided to refine our focus a little bit to teachers, educators, and students, because what we found is that last year we had the festival on a Friday and a Saturday, and Friday we had the most views because teachers ended up using our festival as virtual field trips, and they joined. We had something like 18,000 views on Friday, and that was probably an underestimate because teachers were signing in and then sharing the festival YouTube with their students. So anyway, it was really fantastic. So we want everybody to come. We want everybody to be part of La Fiesta and to be there. So again, it's for everyone, not just Latinx folks. It is free.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ismée, but I think this is the thing that this is still something that I come across when I talk to people, teachers and librarians, the idea that I don't need to bring in Latinx books into my classroom because I don't have Latinx kids in my classroom. And the idea that Latinx books are just for Latinx kids is something that we want to completely debunk. These books are for everyone. So not only is everyone welcome, but this is for you. This is for all of you. This is for all of
It's
all
true.
Of So I think that that's an important thing to get across to teachers and librarians, educators who may not always think that way.
Yeah, and also, parents and students themselves. It's this idea that a good story is a good story. It doesn't matter, necessarily who wrote it or what the protagonist is. If there's truth in that human experience, everybody can relate to that, and that's where we're getting to. And at the same time, learning about somebody else who maybe doesn't look like you or has had a very different experience from you has tremendous value, especially for young people, because it teaches you to have empathy. It teaches you to not think of the other as an other, but as someone who's very similar to you, that shares similar feelings, emotions, experiences. So for all of those reasons, the Latinx KidLit Book Festival, we hope, will have a very large audience this year. We're very excited. So it's free. Anybody can join. The main festival will happen on Thursday and Friday, the 9th and the 10th of December. You can go to our website, latinxkidlitbookfestival.com. You can see the schedule. We will also have some additional events that you can read about just for educators on Wednesday. And then we also have an authors and a pre-published authors event on Tuesday that you can read about. We will have content for kids from preschool all the way through 12th grade, as well as, all book lovers. Authors and illustrators will be talking about their picture books, their middle grade books, young adult books, graphic novels, and poetry. So there should be something for everyone. And so what will happen is the panels will air. The viewers will be able to interact with the panelists via the live chat, and everything is recorded, and then it will live on our YouTube page in perpetuity, so it can be accessed, later on down the road. Next slide, please. So one thing that we would love everyone's help with right now is helping us get student questions. So this was one of the most popular pieces of the festival last year. And again, the idea for it grew out of the sense that we wanted kids to feel valued, and we wanted kids to know that we care about what they think. We wanted to validate them. And so we reached out and we said, parents, students, teachers, librarians, have the kids send us their burning questions about book writing or illustrating, or, what is it like when you have writer's block? Questions that when an adult asks it, it sounds like an adult asks it. But when a kid asks it, it's so beautiful and original. So we got these kids to send in little videos of themselves asking these questions, and we put them into the panels, and it was super fun because a lot of the panelists hadn't seen the questions before. They might have read them, but they hadn't actually seen like the fifth grader asking them this question, and then watching their reactions. All the panelists were always floored by the insight and how powerful these questions were. So, but we need to do it again. So we need as many students as possible to submit questions. Again, you can do it on our website. And the really fun part is that if the question is selected to be featured in the festival, that student's classroom is entered into a drawing to win a classroom set of books. That's 30 books for the student and the student's classmates. So that's super fun. And we had so much positive feedback from the kids who won. They were like sending us pictures, and they were so proud to share to their classmates. So we felt like we did attain our goal to make those students feel like important. Like that's, and honestly, the pandemic isn't completely over. And even when it's over, this is still an important goal. Like we want kids to feel important and feel powerful and feel like they can become writers or illustrators or editors or any of these things. And so, yeah, that's one of the missions of our festival. Next slide, please. And I will give you just a brief teaser of some of the wonderful creators who you will see. Tori Maldonado is an educator himself in New York City and a wonderful middle grade author. He will be joined by Rebecca Balcarcel, who is a Portobello Prize winner for her middle grade. The other half of Happy, they're going to be in conversation about books. This will be our keynote kickoff on Thursday morning. Next slide, please. 1,000 words. There's Hilda's on the panel with us. This is a panel that features picture book authors. We will talk about the power of picture books. We can do the next slide. Remember Me. So this is a panel where we actually have a mixture of authors from different age groups that write for different age groups, but they will be talking all about sort of the Latinx experience of family icons in our culture in historical fiction. So this one is another exciting one. I mean, I was not the head of the programming committee, but it's really fun to sit back and listen to the conversations as people think of these really exciting ways to put creators together and topics to discuss. So it's really fun. I'm very excited. Next slide. Oh, and I'm glad I put this in because I almost forgot to talk about the draw-offs.
It's the most
super fun. So the draw-offs there will be 3 illustrators who will be on camera with their boards and their writing implements. And we have one moderator, in this case, Adriana Hernandez Bergstrom, who is also our amazing graphics design lead for the entire festival. She's been fantastic. All the website looks beautiful because of her. So Adriana is going to moderate this. And this we need the students to tune into because the students will put in the chat prompts. So like last year, things came out, again, things that only, young people could think of, like a cat eating a hot dog, riding a pickle, like things like this. And then the illustrators are like, okay. And then they're drawing. And as they're drawing, the moderator's asking questions. And so it's super fun. And I should also say, we have more Spanish language content this festival. That was some of the feedback. We joined with the NCT Latinx Caucus very early on in the planning stages for this year's festival to get their input. And so we said, of course, we can do more Spanish language content. And so one of the draw-offs is going to be completely in Spanish. And I think this will be fabulous for native language Spanish speakers, but also any students of any, classrooms who are learning Spanish, because foreign language studies, it will be so easy for them to understand what's going on because it's drawing. So I'm excited about that too. And we have some craft sessions also. I don't think I have another. No. Okay. But so let me quickly talk about the craft session, because that was the other piece of feedback we got. So I'm thinking we have 4 craft sessions. So these are sessions with, luminaries in their field. So like Margarita Engel is going to talk about poetry and teach how to write poetry. And Meg Medina is going to talk about writing sort of the middle grade novel and how she finds her stories. And these craft sessions are designed for the teachers to be able to, tune in with their students so that the students can actually learn how to accomplish these things. And then also on our website, we have many, many craft videos that can be accessed to use as prompts at the beginning of lessons that a handful of our authors put together for you. So things like setting, like Anzea Camp, who's spearheading this education aspect, has a fantastic video where she talks about how she developed setting and used words and sound and cadence to really make the setting very full and tactile in her novel, Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet. So I encourage everybody to go to our website, look at all of the resources that we have, sign up for our newsletter, let us know if you're coming, spread the word. And if you know a student who might want to be on like videos themselves, asking a question, have them send it in. And we will only identify the student by the first name, last initial, grade, and the city that they're in. So it's, privacy concerns. So anyway, we all hope you will join us. Very exciting.
And I hope you were all taking notes, because Ismée just gave us like 1,000 places to go, things to do.
I know. I'm like, what did I forget? I probably forgot
nothing. You forgot nothing. It was amazing.
Thank you so much. And of course, everything, all that information is on the website, which is right here. And I recommend that you go or also follow Latinx KidLit Book Festival on Twitter, Instagram, all the shenanigans, because they're posting awesome things all the time. So now we're going to talk about some highlight stuff. Woo.
Okay, you want to talk about the amplio umbrella of Latinidad right here. Look at this. I mean, it's so beautiful. I could cry. Yeah, so Hilda is one of our faculty for the upcoming Latinx Symposium, which is in person at the Highlights Foundation Retreat Center, and then also online. So Hilda, I don't know how we got you. How did we get you? How? How did you say?
Thank you for asking me to join. I'm really excited to do this year. And yeah, it's gonna be great. We're gonna, in addition to, obviously, as you can see, that 4 of us are gonna be there. Alex, Mia, Noni, and me, and then also another one of the faculty member is Ernesto Cisneros, as well as we're gonna have a bunch of guests. Agent Jennifer Rofe, editor. I'm sorry, what's her name? Shelley Romero, and illustrator Jacqueline Alcantara, and authors the Mulit sisters, Maika and Melitza. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about drama. We're gonna be talking about craft. We're gonna be talking about the business of books, and we're gonna be talking about community and drama, of course. So I don't know, did I miss anything?
No, the drama, you had to say the drama twice, I think, because it's so, and this is something that we talked about when we were just throwing around ideas for this year. So this is our 2nd year of the Latinx Symposium. Last year it was only virtual. This year we'll have those 2 options. And when we were talking about what was the genesis of it, what is something that does try to encompass all of our very varied personalities, we thought of drama, because sometimes that is something that is used against us. We're too dramatic, we're too much, or we're not enough, and the idea of how can you be exactly enough, Latinx enough, and hopefully we're answering you already are. And that when you see all of the different people, the faculty and our amazing guests, and it's just a portion of intersecting identities, that you see that we can have fun with the term drama, but really it means that we are all Latinx enough. Like that's a big question. I don't know if anyone else has come across being muy dramática, because I have.
Yeah, for me, I think it's been more the opposite. People always said, "Oh, you're so quiet and shy. You don't seem like you're," which is weird. I mean, I am myself, and yes, we're all enough.
Yeah, that's because you're a lawyer and you like got that lawyer energy where you're like, I'm going to go in there and sort it out. That's how I feel about you, Hilda.
Well, thank you.
If I get sent to jail, I am calling you.
But I think as you mentioned, Alex, a lot of our conversation on craft is sort of pushing back against that belief of what being enough is, or what amount of detail equals enough representation, right? How do we dismantle those stereotypes and transform them into complex characters? And how we push back against things. And we will, again, have a wonderful conversations with an editor and an agent about the actual business of publishing, and what agents are looking for, what is, yes and no's, what editors are really looking out for, and all that wonderful nitty gritty of these events. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, one of the things that contributes to the idea of drama is ritual and ceremony. And that is some of the drama that we need, especially when we're in community. And one of the things that I look forward to in being together is for us to light the candles, for us to come in community in circle, and for us to join together in self-care and in healing and recovery, and in celebration. And I think especially on this planet, but in this volatile industry, we all have to take that time to celebrate every step, every victory along the way. We were all mentioning several persons who had mentorships who are, have agents. And I know at least 3 who contacted me this week who said they have book deals. And these were people that I worked with in some way, or that I knew about, and that we've all been cheerleading, and so they were resilient past the rejection, which is normal in the industry, right? But even though we say it's normal, doesn't mean that our souls don't ache a little when there's struggle. And so I think that when we come together, we remember to celebrate everything. Everybody who came here tonight, celebrate that you came here tonight. You're busy. You carved out time to receive, right? And that's a huge, that's a huge thing to do when we all have jobs and stresses and worries. You made this time tonight on your journey, and we're going to carve out future time, and just to celebrate the fact that you're submitting, to celebrate the fact that you wrote 10 words, to celebrate the fact that you started outlining while you were doing the dishes. All those things is part of what we want to come together to do, and kind of getting rid of am I Latinx enough, or am I enough to be a writer? The minute that you said that's who I am, as Hilda said, that's who I am. that's who you are. So we're also coming to celebrate exactly who all of you are, and the dreams that you want to pursue.
And also celebrating for those who are interested in the in-person one, somebody else making you food.
God, yes. That's not a joke. Yes. I want to celebrate someone else making me food, for sure. But I think one of the things that people who are not necessarily writers, when they ask me about, like, oh, you're part of Las Musas and you do this work in the community, you volunteer. None of us get paid for this, for doing the book festival or Las Musas. And why would you, spend your time amplifying other people? And I'm like, why wouldn't you? I think the question really should be, why wouldn't you spend your time amplifying other people? Because I remember one of the first events that I went to with Mia Garcia when we were on the same panel, and she said, and I'm going to misquote you, Mia, so apologies in advance, but basically you said, it's the idea that there's only so many spots at the table is a myth. This table is endless. It goes on. We have room for everybody. So once you understand that there is room for everyone, then it is no problem amplifying other voices. That's what you want to do, because and frankly, that's how we get that endless table, by making a conscious choice to amplify people in, that we want to have more of their voices and more of their contributions, and want to see more of it in kids publishing. So yeah.
And also with what you're saying, Alex, I think about kids publishing and children's publishing, and I was reflecting on this today. All of these books that are making these picture books, these chapter books, these young adult books, they are 100% for so many of the adults in our community who have not had that beautiful experience of seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, all of the experiences, all the complexity that we've always known was there the whole time. So these picture books are for just as much for that daddy, that abuelo, that mom, that caregiver that's reading them, as much as it is for the child, because Ismée, me, Alex, all of us, Hilda, we didn't have this available to us. You know, I look now at the explosion of books, it's just a trickle, but we didn't even have that. And so these books that you're making pictures, you're healing whole families. The way I see that, you know, you're writing for that middle grader 100%, but you're also healing the teacher who is able to put that in the classroom and bring that to the whole community of everyone who is in what we're saying is Latinidad, and those out or without, who we're bringing in to help them to understand who we are.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and sort of touching on some of what Noni just said, you know, as writers, we're all readers also. And so, of course, we're going to want to amplify really good books because we want good books to read. I mean, there are all these creators out there who are just creating these really beautiful, beautiful books that we can enjoy. In my case, until 3:00 in the morning every day when I shouldn't be, but it's wonderful and I love it.
It's for us, and it's for our kids and our families and the people that, you know, we're thinking about the kids we were when we were young, when didn't have these books and had to do that extra work of sort of imagining people like us in these stories, and we want to give kids that, you know, that representation too. It's important. Nobody can do this alone. I don't know a writer who is successful who has been like, nope, it was just me all by myself. Like, it just doesn't exist.
And with that, we're going to head into some questions, and I'm going to stop the screen share.
So we have a couple questions, or sort of one bigger question, but if anyone else has a question or just something you want to chat about, or you're like, I don't understand why you're there, they keep saying this weird thing, please put that in the Q&A and we will address it. But we had a question about a person who is not Latinx by birth, welcome to, and I'm assuming welcome to the symposium, because just to be clear, anyone is welcome at the Latinx KidLit Book Festival. It's free, it's open, it will be live or premiering on YouTube on December 9th and 10th. So that is literally, the doors are wide open. As far as the Latinx Symposium goes, that symposium is specifically geared toward people who identify as Latinx, self-identify. None of us here can go around saying to someone else, oh, you're 25% Latinx, or there's no litmus test for being Latinx. If you identify as Latinx, if you say you are, then you are, because that's how we roll. You know, there's no sort of like, oh, but your abuelita was from somewhere else, or oh, but you're this generation. There's none of that. So I hope that answers the first part of the question. And then I think the second part of the question was about exploring incorporating indigenous languages into picture books, and this is particularly for a Paraguayan author. We actually, I mentioned Kat Galeano before, who is Paraguayan American and speaks Guarani. I think for somebody who has that connection to the community, that would be amazing. I would love to read that book so much. As we said before, the more of these voices that are coming from these communities, the better. I hope I answered that question.
I want to echo that because one of my hermanas, my mentee, is also from Paraguay, and her MG, her middle grade, has a whole lot of Guarani, yes, and Spanish, and they just flow back and forth, and she just weaves it perfectly into the book. And so I'm like, yes, absolutely, include everything and anything.
I gotta say, that's one of the things that I'm most excited about. That is a subtle change that is happening in the Latinx KidLit that I read. That the languages, the Spanish or the Patois or the Portuguese or whatever it is, are coming across in these books, and it's seen it very much as the part of the main character's world. And I'm like, I'm here for it. Like, that's exactly what it should be. We should not feel that there is any distance between the main character and the language that they speak, because not every Latinx person speaks Spanish, or even if they come from a Spanish speaking country, they may not speak Spanish. I know lots of people in this country who are Latinx who do not speak Spanish. So it's not everyone's experience, but for a lot of people, that Spanish, or even attempting to learn the language or navigate the parts of your family that do speak that language, that's part of that identity. And I say we, but okay, I'll say me. I want that messiness. I want that complexity and that layered look at all of the things as Latinx people that we have to deal with. We're dealing with so many different aspects to our identity, and so many, as I said before, intersections, that I want all of it. I don't want to try to like read that out and be like, I'm just a girl sitting here. Maybe I like someone. I mean, I want that too. I'm not anti-romance. I love a good romance, but I also want all of those other things because that's real to me, and that's the experience of a complex kid.
Yes.
So I went off the rails then. I'm sorry.
And I want to add slang into that. Everything that Alex said, but I also want to add slang to somebody who wrote a Yo Mama book. Part of poetry of the people is slang, and it needs to not be relegated outside of what is considered good or educated. Okay, it's sometimes about code switching. I know that in itself could be a debate and a discussion, but I want to, rather than talk about switching, I want to talk about all of this being incorporated, because our children are walking around speaking Spanglish or speaking Spanish or speaking a very flawed Spanish that I grew up with, which is horribly incomplete, but yet still part of my identity, and slang and proper British English, all of it. And so when we're talking about that, those are the children who need those representations. So I really appreciate what you were saying, Alex, because our kids bring all those things, and we don't need to tell them to leave any part of it, but rather to weave it together. That's intersectionality, when we take it all together.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Noni. We have another question from Judy. Do you suggest a glossary for the Spanish used? I do not. Anybody else?
I can pop in because it's interesting. My first book, Water and May, came out in 2017. It was purchased in 2015, which was right around the time when We Need Diverse Books was like a movement. So I wrote that book. It's about a Dominican American 15-year-old in Washington Heights who wants more than anything to have a baby so someone in her family will love her. It was very much, and then the doctors tell her baby has only half a heart. So it's very much based on my experience working as a fetal cardiologist in Washington Heights, taking care of young women, meaning in high school, who went through this experience. And, I grew up Cuban American, hearing my abuelitos speak, but I learned Spanish in school because my abuelitos did not want to speak Spanish to us. They wanted to practice their English with their nietos. And then I lived in Spain in college to become more proficient in speaking the language. And then I've worked in Washington Heights for 15 years. So when I speak Spanish, most people often will ask me, where are you from? Because my accent is very bizarre and my grammar is not perfect. But so when I wrote Water and May, I wove in a lot of Dominican slang and I should also say I have a lot of mom friends from the Catholic school that my kids go to in New York City who are from Argentina, who are from, Puerto Rico, who are from Spain, who are from Mexico, lots of different countries, and they weren't going to understand the slang. And for that book, I did have a glossary, But also in that book, I want to say that the Spanish words are italicized. After 2017, there was a big switch. So publishing decided we're not going to italicize words that are not in English because we don't want to other them. It's just part of the language of the character. And glossaries are really sort of not in vogue anymore for the same reason. It's like this idea that if the reader really wants to know what it is, they can Google it. And so for my second book, there is no glossary. So
that's an interesting question, because I had an editor insist that I have a very extensive glossary, very extensive, and it included all the languages used. So there's a French term that's in the glossary. There are terms about location, geography, and I haven't yet figured out whether we just overwhelmed the reader, because it wasn't a personal decision. I can tell you that. And so I wonder how educators will respond. I personally feel right now that it wasn't necessary, in my personal opinion. But I also want to point out we do not always have control over the things that our publishers do. That being said, maybe that's something we'll talk about in the panel. We can, Ismée, get into that more with because it's never not going to be an issue with how it is that we are presenting Indigenous languages or our native tongues. Also, let's keep in mind what everybody's saying here, in that there's no one Spanish. That there isn't one Spanish at all. And so, what is, means this in one language doesn't, as you all know, listening very well, in another. So there's also the complexity that goes beyond this ridiculous idea that there's just this Spanish, as in what Ismée, some of what you and I may have learned in school, right? Academic Spanish is probably the closest to but that's not understood by everyone. And if we went around speaking academic Spanish to everyone, they don't understand what it is we're saying, because it's not the common way of speaking all the time. So yeah, language is complex, and I think that's another topic that we can revisit in our symposium.
I think it's also important to realize that English is complex too. I mean, if you're living in London, you have different words than if you are living in New York, than if you are living in the South, or in Australia. So, I mean, it's similar, but I think it's probably more drastic for Spanish words because there's so many more countries and cultures that are influencing the Latinx experience. But I think English speakers are familiar with that idea.
Well, I just think they're complex, and they don't realize how complex Spanish is. And that's another thing altogether, right? Everything that we do is oversimplified or appropriated, and everything that's not is complex. And, so that's part of our resilience and our defiance too, and making sure that's communicated in all these things we're writing.
And as Mina said earlier about language evolving, and this is what we're talking about, and the term Latinx versus Latine versus Hispanic, all that, like I want to challenge people a little bit with the idea that there even is a proper Spanish, or a Spanish that que es más bonito. I get that sometimes when I speak Spanish, and my Spanish is not perfect in grammar. I don't know her. I don't know grammar. I haven't met her. Sorry. I know I'm a writer, but I feel like, I've been told, oh, es tan bonito your Spanish. And I'm like, why? Why do you think my Spanish is prettier sounding than another one? You have been told that there is a proper way and a less proper way. And that is, to me, that's BS. That's not real. That just like it's not in English. And I feel like we in our communities have to dig into where those things are coming from, where those sentiments are coming from, and kind of dig them out a little bit so that we're not, giving a value judgment, putting a value on how a person speaks, what words they choose, and what that slang is, or what that style of communication is, whatever that Spanish, so Spanish or other speaking country is. I think it's important not to do that.
Yeah, it's sort of back to the question about using the glossary. I have not used glossaries. I have put Spanish in my books. I do feel that because I'm writing for children, that I would like, I don't like to stop what I'm doing and look something up in Google. So I would like to make the meanings of the words very obvious through context, and that's what I do. But I have not used glossaries.
That makes a lot of sense. We have a couple of questions that are MUSA questions, and I'm going to punt over to Mia, if you can see them, Mia.
I can't. I'm going to do my best to answer them. And if I miss anything, lasmusasbooks.com has all the information in our FAQ, which breaks it down in much more details. I have a question from Marta. If I've published several nonfiction picture books, but want to move to a middle grade novel, would you suggest I try to join Las Musas as a newbie rather than a published author? So there are three branches of Las Musas. The hermanas, who are the mentees, these are unpublished authors or illustrators. And the goal there is to try to demystify the publishing world and work on a project with them. So that's one branch. The main branch is MUSA debuts. These are our author illustrators with their first or their second books. So debut is a bit of a catch-all misnomer because we do have a lot of people with their sophomore books. And in this branch, Las Musas, which is the main branch, works a lot like a debut group, which is essentially how we started. We started as a debut group. So that is still very much our central core. All of our marketing and all of our pushes works around this debut group. And then we have the madrinas who work in tangent with the hermanas in the mentorship program. Madrinas are authors or illustrators that have worked on usually 3 or more plus books. Essentially, they are, the backbone of this creative world, of this Latinx creator world. Again, Monica Brown, Lulu de Lacre, and Angela Dominguez, all these wonderful authors who are coming in to support the mentorship program. So I say that because we've had musas who have come in with several books and become madrinas, and musas who, for example, have had several books in one particular age bracket, but then use Las Musas to debut themselves in a different age bracket. Right. So Noni first joined Las Musas as a debut for their YA, for their second YA. The truth is. But then they debuted again as a picture book MUSA because we didn't always have picture books. The picture books were such a different, just a different world to us. And so we created the picture book MUSAs and that way, also, in general, in publishing, audiences don't always transfer. So maybe your picture book readers may not be the same as your middle grade readers, and therefore you're essentially debuting again to a new audience. So you were once again a debut. So all of these details are in lasmusasbooks.com under the FAQ. So that's really up to you if you want to join as a debut with your middle grade book or as a more established nonfiction picture book author with the madrinas. So there are options for you. And so I hope I answered that well enough. We are a complicated bunch, which means we never have a direct answer to anything.
It depends.
So I have a question here from Jamie. So it's, how involved is the Las Hermanas mentorship application process, and what is ballpark acceptance rate? So the second part of that question about the acceptance rates, it varies from round to round because our mentors are volunteers. So it really depends on how many volunteers we have for that round and how many applications we get. Last year, I believe we had I believe it was a 25% mentorship matching. We had over 70 applications, and it seems to grow every year. But again, it depends on how many mentors we actually are able to get, and that includes writers and illustrators. And in terms of the application process, we do ask people about their project. We ask for a 5 to 10 page sample. This is really important for our mentors to review these samples to see if they are a good match for mentees, to see if they match in style and genre, or in general are actually able to help this mentee. So we ask you about the project. We ask you what round of edits you're in, and also what you're looking for from this mentorship. For example, if you're looking for a lot of querying help and a lot of submission help, but we don't have a mentor who wants to focus on that season, we want to pair mentors and mentees who actually want to work on the same thing together so that it is as effective as possible and successful for everybody involved. So all those details again, and the application period is also on lasmusasbooks.com under mentorship.
Thank you, Mia. We have another question here from Maria. Is it better to write books with both languages mixed in the same story, or write the story in both languages and pitch them as bilingual? And I'm assuming that means picture book. So Hilda and Noni are resident picture book authors for this panel. Do you have any ideas on that, on pitching a picture book idea as a bilingual book versus having, I'm thinking of Emma Otegi's book, Song of Freedom. Did I get that wrong?
Marti's Song for Freedom and also Fled for Gabo were released
yes,
in English and Spanish simultaneously.
Right. So that each page was an English page and there's a Spanish page, or other books that have Spanish and English interwoven. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what your story, what you want your story to look like. In my one picture book, The Cotton Living Room, I just have a little bit of Spanish sprinkled in. It's not, I wouldn't call it a bilingual book. It's just, the mom calling several kids mi amor and papito and stuff like that. So really, I think it really depends on what you want and what your story needs. Does it need to be a bilingual story or doesn't it? And, I know that's kind of a fudgy answer, but I think with art, that's what it's always like. It's just what does your story need?
That's exactly right. And I think sometimes you'll write your story if it's in English, and you may have an opportunity later for it to be translated. I know that Jackie Asua Kramer had that experience, where she said this would make an excellent book in Spanish translation. I can speak for my lane as somebody who writes in rhyme and writes with unconventional language and slang. That is very hard to translate. And so for me personally, I tend to be, it's embedded in what I write, particularly in picture books. All my picture books have Spanish, and I anticipate in the future with someone asking about indigenous languages that they might be Taino words, which are in the English language used constantly all the time anyway. But that's going to be interwoven throughout. So I imagine that what you would do is study the books out there that, like Emma Otegi's books, are done that way. Study Jackie Asua Kramer's books and many others, that are both. I have side-by-side books of Annika Denise's books, Planting Stories, the Portobello Prize story, and my children, I read both side by side, especially as someone who's not a Spanish speaker, to study. So I would say to everybody out there, when you have those questions, look within places like Las Musas, because we have so many resources to find models, and read those books and then say, this is speaking to me. And that will give you more shape, because you are ultimately the determiner of what shape your story needs to take. But obviously, we're always here to say, well, what are the mentor texts? And I think what the question is asking is, I need some mentor text to make decisions. That's generally how I kind of operate if I'm not sure where to go with something. My last example is Carol Boston Weatherford, who's someone who is a master. I'm investigating, okay, how do I write this picture book biography that I'm working on? I'm in unknown territory. I'm going to study her for the next week and read everything I can to proceed forward.
Can I jump in just to tag on the mentor text comment, which I think is so important and impactful? Because I did forget to mention that one of the efforts that Las Musas and the KidLit, Latinx KidLit Book Festival have joined together to create is a database of Latinx books, which just was put out in our newsletter celebrating Latinx/Hispanic Heritage Month, and it should be on our website. But this database, we are attempting to put together in one place all the books created by Latinx creators in a very searchable format. So you could search by age group, you could search by themes, if it deals with grief or loss of a parent or divorce, for instance. And you can search by country of origin. So if you have, our thoughts were, wouldn't this be great for a librarian if they have a specific kid who's dealing with an issue maybe they want, a Puerto Rican protagonist or Colombian American protagonist. And so we're trying to make it very searchable from a database perspective. And so I think this would also be really valuable for writers who are looking for mentor texts for the same purposes.
I will also add in terms from the publishing angle, if you're wondering how easy it is, like if it adds value, it's a good way to also research agents and editors, and particularly imprints and publishing houses. A lot of some publishing houses prefer to do their own translations. Some will publish an English and Spanish version and do have that going on automatically. Others prefer to sell the rights to a global language and stuff like that, and or the author can do the translation. So as Noni noted, like Emma Otegi, Jackie Azul Kramer, apologies, it's also bedtime here if you hear some screaming. It's a good place to also start seeing which publishers are putting out that representation, that language representation, for when you are, researching agents and researching editors, to have that in your back pocket.
Yeah, one of the festival sponsors, Lil Libros, is a publisher that publishes bilingual books. Bilingual Latinx books, and they're only, I think, a couple years old. They're still somewhat small, but they're mighty and they're doing that work. So there's a lot of resources. Like I said before, I hope you were all taking notes, because we have dropped so much knowledge on y'all. I mean, I scribbling madly, writing all the things down, following all the websites, all that good stuff. But we have answered all of our questions. We have done all the things. I just wanted to thank all of you, Hilda Burgos, Ismée Williams, NoNieqa Ramos, Mia Garcia, and the Highlights Foundation, of course, for letting us kick out. Look at the swag that Ismée is bringing to look at this. Look, see, gotta end with the swag. Okay.
I did take it from my kid, who uses it as like her extra book bag for school. It's very helpful. See, it has binders in it. And this is hers too. We have very cute pencil cases on our website. They're awesome. I bought all this stuff. My kids took it all.
Stop stealing from your kids, Ismée. I just wanted to thank you all for being with us tonight as we kick off Latinx Heritage Month. This next 30 days is going to be beautiful, but it's beautiful 365. Let's celebrate Latinx authors and all of our wide, beautiful reality every day. Thank you so much. Y buenas noches.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. It was so fun. Let's just hang out all night. I can do this. Keep going. Thank you so much. And I think somebody put it in the chat. Can you put the names and authors and books and publishers in the chat? Oh, it is hard to keep track. But you will get, I think I mentioned it before, you will get a recording of this webinar sent to you in the next 24 hours or so you can watch it again and take all the notes.
We'll have the notes online. So
yes. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you.